Hello there and welcome to the Coffee with Colin, and thank you for joining me. Over the next number of weeks I want to explore a handful of topics that are all correlated under the one umbrella, and that umbrella is self-care. Some time back I wrote a blog called POYOOMF, POYOOMF, and it stands for Put On Your Own Oxygen Mask First. We're all familiar with that particular phrase, all of us, I'm sure, having flown at some point. So in an aircraft situation, putting on your own oxygen mask first means if you're an adult and you're a capable adult, well then you put on your own oxygen mask first so that you can be of assistance to people who, for whatever reason, whether they're younger or older or infirm or whatever, so that you can be of service to them. But you must look after yourself first, otherwise disaster can ensue. And when I put that piece out some time back, it caught the zeitgeist. A lot of people commented that it was heading in the right direction. Viktor Frankl has said in one of his books, Viktor Frankl is famous for having written the book Man's Search for Meaning, having survived the Holocaust. Anyway, Viktor is one of his phrases is, we detect rather than invent our missions in life. And I love that phrase. We detect rather than invent our missions in life. And I sort of feel over the last couple of years as my blog and my vlog, my podcast, my writing has evolved, I sort of feel I'm being drawn to this area of self-care. So POYOOMF is an interesting concept, and it can be applied to the four key areas in our lives: our health, our wealth, our relationships, and our spirit. Our health, our wealth, our relationships, and our spirit. And over the next 4 weeks I want to explore each of them, because the truth is we can't expend more than we've taken in. If you like, our emotional energy, our physical energy indeed, is dependent on what we put in first before we can expend it. It's no different to a bank account. We can't spend the money ad infinitum that we don't have, but we also can't give of ourselves ad infinitum without replenishing. So if we don't put on our own oxygen masks first, well then we run the risk of running out of oxygen. We run the risk of being no good to anybody, including ourselves. So over the next number of weeks I really want to explore this concept, POYOOMF, and apply it into health, wealth, relationships and spirit, and see where it leads us all. In fact, since I wrote that particular blog, I created a board game of the same name, POYOOMF. And it's basically snakes and ladders for the corporate world, let's be honest, right? But basically what it's about is it's about getting into organizations and helping everybody, every individual in the organization realize that they have a part to play. And if they don't play their part properly, well then really and truly they're holding the whole organization back. There's a tendency in organizations for people in back offices and back rooms and away from the front line per se, to think that they don't really impact on whether the company grows or slows. But that's not true. So the board game, I've used it very effectively in a handful of organizations. The board game just teaches everybody that no matter what part you play in an organization, the work you do, the effort that you put in has a direct correlation on whether the business grows or slows. But you can only put in that correct effort if you yourself are looking after yourself. You can't expend your energy ad infinitum. I had a conversation very recently with a friend of mine, two friends of mine indeed, and we spoke about this very phenomenon that we just can't give of ourselves forever and ever and ever without replenishing, because we just end up crashing and burning, and we're no use to ourselves and no use to the people around us. And one friend in particular, over the last number of months, has put in Trojan effort in helping a restaurant get off the ground, and the truth is, and she's identified this, the truth is that she has expended more than she has. She's working on fumes, and that's not sustainable. Thankfully, she's got a break coming up, which is wonderful, and she'll come back refreshed and ready for more. How many of us get up every morning when the alarm goes off, and it's like the starter's going bang, and away we go, and we race off to the day, and we just burn ourselves out and fall back through the finish line at the end of the day, stick on some mind-numbing TV, and then crawl off to bed, set the alarm for tomorrow so that the starter gun can go again. That's the way a lot of people live their lives, and it's not healthy. It's not healthy. And so over the next number of weeks, I'd like to take this particular concept of POYOOMF and apply it across health, wealth, relationships and spirit under the umbrella of self-care, and put it out there for you to consider. We're going to use two concepts throughout the series, and I'm just going to outline these for you very quickly if I may. First one is the Big Rocks Theory, Stephen Covey's The Big Rocks Theory. Bottom line is, I've done a blog on it, so I can refer you to a link at the bottom of the piece here if you want to go check that out. But the bottom line is, we must look after the important stuff in our lives first, and that includes our health, our wealth, our relationships and our spirit. So we must find time in our planners to look after the important things first. They are the big rocks. And the second concept is the one thing. The one thing. So over the next 4 weeks, we'll cover health, wealth, relationships and finance. We'll have you identify in each of those areas what are the big rocks for you. And then we'll have you identify in the week that we're heading into, we'll have you identify what one thing can you do in that week that's following that would have the biggest impact on your big rock in that particular area. And I'm looking forward to it. So will you join me for the next 4 weeks, please? Join me for the next 4 weeks, next 4 coffees with Colin. So what's the big rock for next week? What's the most important thing you can do next week? If I may suggest, be so bold as to suggest, the most important thing you need to do next week is come back for another coffee with Colin, because we're going to start on this journey together. And over the next 4 weeks, the next month, we're going to explore your views, what's going on in your life around health, thereafter wealth, relationships and spirit. POYOOMF, put on your own oxygen mask first in all of those areas under the umbrella of self-care, and life will be better, I promise. And thank you for joining me for this week's Coffee with Colin. I hope and trust as ever that you got something from it. If you have done, you think somebody else would benefit, I'd be delighted if you'd pass the link on. If it's your first time here and you'd like more of this type of stuff, well then pop to the homepage, colinobrien.motivation.com. Leave me some details. I'll make sure you get a link like this on a weekly basis. Most importantly, please consider what's been shared here today and apply it into your thinking for this next week. And equally as importantly, please come back next week and we share another coffee together and I'll ruminate on some other aspect of life and business. Indeed, next week it's very specific. It's POYOOMF for your health. So please come back next week. We'll share another coffee together and we'll take it from there. In the meantime, get some good coffee for sure. Get some fresh air for sure. If you spend a lot of time alone, I recommend you spend some time with people. If you spend a lot of time with people, I recommend you spend some time alone. And then when the time is right, and only when the time is right, get your head back in the game, get organised for the week ahead, get stuck in, make next week count, and I'll see you here this time next week for another Coffee with Colin. Sláinte. Delicious. I really love great coffee. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.